My twin brother lied and my parents believed him, until I exposed everything with screenshots and forced their reputation to crumble as my revenge. From the moment my twin brother James and I were born, it was clear that our lives would follow very different paths. As children, we shared everything, a birthday, a room, even the same hopes and dreams. But there was one thing we did not share equally: our parents' love and attention. James was the golden child, the apple of their eye. He could do no wrong, and every achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated as though he had won an Olympic medal. I, on the other hand, was often a shadow, an afterthought in the glow of his brilliance. My accomplishments were met with indifference, my interests dismissed as trivial pursuits. I remember one Christmas when we were 7. James had asked for a shiny new bicycle, and I had wished for a set of watercolor paints. On Christmas morning, his eyes lit up as he unwrapped the bike of his dreams, while I found a cheap, off-brand set of paints that looked like they had been picked up last minute from a discount store. The message was clear: his dreams were worth more than mine. This favoritism wasn't just about gifts, it permeated every aspect of our lives. At school, if James got into trouble, it was brushed off as boys being boys. When I excelled in my classes, it was hardly acknowledged. Worse, if James failed, I was somehow to blame for not helping him enough. My successes were eclipsed by his failures, my joys overshadowed by his whims. James quickly learned to exploit this disparity. He would lie, accuse me of things I hadn't done, and our parents believed him without question. I was often punished for his misdeeds, each false accusation another blow to my already fragile sense of self-worth. The worst part was not the punishment itself, but the betrayal, the realization that my own flesh and blood would rather see me suffer than face the consequences of his actions. There was one incident that still haunts me. James had broken a vase, a treasured family heirloom, and when our mother demanded to know who was responsible, he pointed his finger at me without a moment's hesitation. Despite my protests, I was grounded for a month, forbidden from seeing my friends or participating in any extracurricular activities. In that moment, looking into my mother's eyes and seeing only disappointment and anger, I truly understood the depth of their favoritism. Life at home became a delicate balancing act, trying to avoid James's traps while still craving the approval and love of my parents. Each day was a reminder that I was not enough, that no matter how hard I tried, I would always be second best. As we grew older, the gap between us only widened. James became more manipulative, and I became more withdrawn, finding solace in books and stories, places where the heroes and heroines overcame adversity and found their happy endings. I dreamed of a day when I could escape, when I could find my own path and prove my worth to the world, even if my parents never saw it. But until then, I remained in the shadows, my spirit bruised but not broken, determined to one day step into the light. Living in the shadow of my brother's golden halo was difficult enough, but the lies he spun around me were an even greater burden. James had a talent for weaving stories that painted me in the worst possible light, stories that our parents readily believed. Each lie he told was like a stone added to the growing pile of injustices I carried on my back. One evening, when we were 12, James had sneaked out to meet his friends, even though our parents had expressly forbidden it. I stayed in my room, immersed in a book, unaware of his disobedience. When our parents discovered his absence, he returned home just in time to see them furious and waiting. Without missing a beat, he spun a tale about how I had dared him to sneak out, claiming I had promised to cover for him. Despite my vehement denials, they chose to believe his version of events. I was grounded for a month, and James got off with a warning. This pattern continued through our teenage years. James had a knack for avoiding responsibility, always shifting the blame onto me. One day, he skipped school to hang out at the arcade. When the principal called our parents, James claimed I had stolen his homework, causing him to fall behind and fear the repercussions of showing up empty-handed. Again, my protest fell on deaf ears, and I was the one punished for his truancy. The culmination of his deceit came during our junior year of high school. James had been caught cheating on a crucial exam, facing expulsion. He claimed that I had given him the answers, that I had coerced him into cheating. The school conducted an investigation, and despite the lack of evidence against me, the damage was done. Our parents were mortified, more concerned about the scandal than the truth. To save face, they decided to pull me out of school, claiming I needed discipline and reflection at home. Things went from bad to worse. My parents' anger knew no bounds. They looked at me with such disappointment, as if I had single-handedly tarnished the family name. My father, usually reserved, unleashed his frustration with harsh words, calling me deceitful and a disgrace. My mother, silent and stern, meted out severe punishments, limiting my freedom to the confines of my room. But the worst part was James. He would smirk at me from across the dinner table, his eyes glinting with the satisfaction of seeing me suffer for his wrongdoings. The lies he had told had not only strained my relationship with my parents, but also isolated me from my peers. Friends who had once been close began to distance themselves, influenced by the stories James spread about me. The final straw came one night when I overheard a conversation between my parents. They were discussing sending me to a boarding school for troubled teens, convinced that I was the root of all problems. Desperation clawed at my chest, knowing I had to get out before they could act on their plan. I had no idea where I would go, but anywhere was better than this prison of lies and betrayal. It was then that my grandmother stepped in. She'd always been my quiet supporter, observing the injustices from afar but now unwilling to stay silent. She took me in, offering a refuge from the storm of false accusations and misplaced anger. Moving in with her was like stepping into a sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe and begin to heal from the emotional scars James had inflicted. Living with my grandmother, Eleanor, I found the space and support to rebuild my life. She encouraged me to pursue my interests, to find my own voice amid the chaos that had defined my childhood. Though the weight of those false accusations lingered, they no longer had the power to define me. With each passing day, I grew stronger, more determined to rise above the lies and reclaim my sense of self. Leaving my parents' home was like stepping out of a storm and into a calm, sunlit meadow. My grandmother's house stood at the edge of town, a quaint, old-fashioned home surrounded by a garden that seemed to bloom year-round. The moment I walked through her door, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a weight I had carried for as long as I could remember. My grandmother, Eleanor, was a woman of few words but infinite wisdom. She welcomed me with open arms, her eyes filled with a compassion I had rarely seen before. "You are safe here," she said, her voice a soothing balm to my wounded spirit. For the first time in years I believed it. Living with my grandmother was a stark contrast to the chaos and emotional turmoil of my parents' house. Eleanor created a sanctuary where I could finally breathe and begin to heal. The walls of her home were lined with books, their spines worn from years of loving use. She introduced me to stories of resilience and hope, tales of characters who faced adversity with courage and grace. These stories became my refuge, a place where I could lose myself and, in turn, find pieces of who I wanted to be. Mornings at my grandmother's house were a gentle ritual. We would sit together at the kitchen table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Eleanor would ask me about my dreams and aspirations, her questions always laced with encouragement and genuine interest. Unlike my parents, she saw my potential and nurtured it, helping me to believe in myself again. Afternoons were spent in her garden, where we tended to the flowers and vegetables. Gardening with Eleanor was more than just planting seeds. It was a lesson in patience and renewal. She taught me that, much like the garden, I too could grow and thrive despite the harshest conditions. Her hands, worn and weathered, guided mine, showing me the beauty in nurturing life and watching it flourish. But it was in the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, that I found my true calling. Eleanor noticed my affinity for words and encouraged me to write. She gave me a journal, its pages blank and inviting, and urged me to fill them with my thoughts and stories. "Writing is a way to make sense of the world," she said. "It is a way to heal." I poured my heart onto those pages, recounting my past and dreaming of a future where I could rise above it. The act of writing was both cathartic and empowering. It allowed me to process my pain, to transform it into something beautiful and meaningful. My grandmother would often read my entries, her eyes crinkling with pride and understanding. "You have a gift," she would say, and for the first time, I started to believe it. With Eleanor's unwavering support, I began to rebuild my life. I enrolled in a local community college, focusing on creative writing and literature. My days were filled with classes and my nights with writing, the words flowing from me like a river released from a dam. I discovered a community of like-minded individuals who shared my passion for storytelling, and together, we encouraged each other to reach new heights. Eleanor's house became my sanctuary, a place where I could retreat from the world and find solace in my writing. Her faith in me was a constant source of strength, her love a guiding light in my darkest moments. She taught me that I was more than the sum of my past, that I had the power to shape my own destiny. As I grew more confident in my writing, I started to submit my work to local publications. The first time I saw my name in print, I felt a rush of validation and pride. My words were being read and appreciated, my voice was finally heard. It was a small victory, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Through it all, Eleanor remained my rock, her presence a steady anchor in the ever-changing tides of my life. She had given me the greatest gift of all, the belief in my own worth. With that belief, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. My grandmother's sanctuary had not only saved me but had also set me free to dream, to write, and to become the person I was always meant to be. Finding solace in my grandmother's sanctuary allowed me to uncover my true passion for writing, but it was the journey that followed that truly defined my path to freedom and success. With Eleanor's constant encouragement, I immersed myself in the world of words, letting my stories and experiences flow onto the pages of my journals and assignments. My days at community college were a whirlwind of learning and discovery. I devoured every book I could get my hands on, from classic literature to contemporary novels, each one offering new insights and inspiration. My professors recognized my talent and pushed me to refine my craft, providing feedback that was both constructive and encouraging. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. It wasn't long before my work began to attract attention. I submitted short stories and essays to local magazines and online publications, each acceptance a small triumph that fueled my confidence. My words were resonating with readers, and the sense of validation was intoxicating. I poured my heart into every piece, drawing from the well of emotions and experiences that had shaped me. One evening, as I sat at my grandmother's kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, I received an email that would change everything. A well-known literary magazine had accepted one of my stories for publication. They praised my writing for its raw honesty and emotional depth, and wanted to feature it in their upcoming issue. I read the email over and over, tears of joy streaming down my face. Eleanor hugged me tightly, her pride evident in her beaming smile. "I knew you could do it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The publication of that story was a turning point. It opened doors I had only dreamed of, leading to opportunities I never thought possible. I began to receive invitations to speak at writing workshops and literary events, sharing my journey and the lessons I had learned along the way. Each engagement was a chance to connect with others who had faced their own struggles, to inspire them to find their voice and tell their stories. As my writing career flourished, so did my financial independence. I started to earn a steady income from my work, enough to support myself and contribute to my grandmother's household. The sense of accomplishment was profound. I had not only escaped the toxic environment of my childhood, but had also built a life of my own, grounded in my passion and talent. But success was not just about financial stability. It was about finding my identity and reclaiming my self-worth. Writing allowed me to process my past, to turn my pain into something beautiful and meaningful. It was a form of therapy, a way to heal the wounds inflicted by years of neglect and false accusations. With every story I wrote, I felt a piece of myself coming back to life. One of the most memorable moments came when a major publishing house offered me a book deal. They wanted to publish a collection of my essays and stories, a testament to my journey and the resilience I had shown. Holding that contract in my hands was surreal. I thought of the little girl who had once been overshadowed by her brother, whose dreams had been dismissed and belittled. Now, here I was, standing on the brink of something extraordinary. Eleanor was there every step of the way, her unwavering support a constant source of strength. She attended every book signing, her pride shining brightly as she introduced herself as my grandmother. "She's always had this fire inside her," she would tell people. "It just needed the right fuel to ignite." Her words were a reminder of how far I had come and the love that had helped me get there. As my book hit the shelves and my name became more widely recognized, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. My success was not just a personal victory, it was a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of believing in oneself. It was proof that, no matter how dark and difficult the road may seem, there is always a way forward, a path to freedom and fulfillment. My writing had given me a voice, a way to tell my story and, in doing so, inspire others to find their own. It had given me the strength to rise above the shadows of my past and step into the light of a new beginning. For that, I would always be grateful. As my writing career soared, it wasn't long before my success caught the attention of my parents. They had always been more interested in appearances and status than in the truth, and now that I had achieved a measure of fame and financial stability, they seemed eager to rewrite the narrative of our relationship. It started with a phone call from my mother. Her voice, once so cold and judgmental, now carried a tone of tentative warmth. "We've been hearing wonderful things about you, dear," she said, as if the years of neglect and emotional abuse had never happened. "Your father and I would love to see you." I was taken aback, uncertain how to respond. Memories of their favoritism, of their unwavering belief in James's lies, came rushing back. But there was also a part of me that longed for their approval, that wished for the family bond I had never truly known. With Eleanor's gentle encouragement, I agreed to meet them, hoping that perhaps time had changed them, softened their hearts. We arranged to meet at a local cafe. I arrived early, my heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and cautious optimism. When my parents walked in, I was struck by how much older they looked, their faces etched with lines of worry and weariness. They embraced me awkwardly, as if unsure of their place in my life. The conversation started politely enough, filled with superficial pleasantries, but it wasn't long before the true purpose of their visit emerged. They were facing financial difficulties, they admitted, and were hoping I could help them out. The words stung, not because they needed help, but because it was clear that their newfound interest in me was driven by desperation, not genuine remorse or love. I listened quietly, my mind racing. They spoke of mounting debts, of potential foreclosure, of a life unraveling at the seams. Yet, there was no acknowledgement of the pain they had caused me, no apology for the years of neglect and unjust punishment. They seemed to believe that my success could simply erase the past, that money could buy forgiveness. When they finally paused, I took a deep breath and spoke my truth. "I'm willing to help you," I said, my voice steady. "But there is one condition. You need to publicly acknowledge the lies James told, the false accusations that you believed without question. I need you to admit that I was not the villain you made me out to be." My parents exchanged uneasy glances. My mother's face hardened, and my father's eyes darkened with anger. "We can't do that," my mother said sharply. "James is your brother. Family matters should stay private." I shook my head, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. "You're asking for my help, and this is my condition. If you can't do this, then I can't help you." I stood up, pushing my chair back. "I've built a life on truth and resilience, and I won't compromise that." I walked out of the cafe, my heart heavy but my resolve unshaken. I had hoped for reconciliation, for a chance to rebuild what had been broken, but their refusal to acknowledge the past made it clear that they were still trapped in the same patterns, unwilling to face the truth. In the days that followed, I focused on my writing, channeling my emotions into my work. My grandmother's house remained my sanctuary, her presence a constant reminder of the love and support that had brought me this far. I received no further contact from my parents, their silence a painful confirmation of their choice, but it was not the end. A few weeks later, I received a message from James. His words were laced with bitterness and anger, a tirade of accusations and insults. He blamed me for our parents' financial troubles, for the strain on the family. But amidst his vitriol, he made a crucial mistake. In a moment of rage, he admitted that he had lied about me all those years ago, that he had enjoyed watching me take the fall for his misdeeds. I stared at the message, a mixture of emotions swirling within me. It was the confession I had longed for, but it came wrapped in malice. I knew what I had to do. I took screenshots of his messages and sent them to my parents, along with a final note. "This is the truth. If you can't face it, then we have nothing more to say to each other." Their response was silence, but the truth had a way of spreading. Soon enough, extended family members began to reach out, offering support and expressing their disappointment in my parents. The facade they had maintained for so long was crumbling, and with it, the last remnants of their control over me. I had finally broken free from their manipulation, free from their lies. My success was now entirely my own, untainted by their influence. As I continued to write and share my story, I found solace in knowing that I had stood up for myself, that I had chosen truth over reconciliation built on falsehoods. My path to freedom was paved with resilience and integrity, and for that, I was truly grateful. The revelation of James's confession was a pivotal moment, but it was what followed that truly defined the course of my life. As the truth about my brother's lies spread through the family, the support I received was overwhelming. Cousins, aunts, and uncles reached out, offering their apologies and understanding. It was as if a long-held breath had finally been released, and with it, a wave of validation that I had yearned for my entire life. However, the most profound impact came from within me. The years of gaslighting and manipulation had left deep scars, but with the truth now out in the open, those wounds began to heal. I realized that my journey wasn't just about seeking validation from others, it was about reclaiming my narrative, owning my truth, and finding peace within myself. As word of James's admission spread, my parents' reputation took a significant hit. Their once proud standing within the community faltered as the facade they had maintained crumbled. People began to see them for who they truly were, parents who had failed their daughter in favor of perpetuating a lie. The criticism they faced was harsh and unrelenting, and for the first time they were forced to confront the reality of their actions. Yet even in the face of public censure, my parents remained silent. They never reached out, never offered an apology or an explanation. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it also reaffirmed my decision to cut ties with them. I could not force them to change or to acknowledge their mistakes. All I could do was continue to live my truth and build a life free from their influence. With the support of my extended family and the unwavering love of my grandmother, I began to embrace my future with a newfound sense of freedom. My writing career continued to flourish, and I decided to channel my experiences into a memoir. It was a deeply personal project, one that required me to revisit painful memories and confront my past head-on. But it was also cathartic, a way to finally put those ghosts to rest. The process of writing my memoir was intense and emotional. I poured everything into those pages, the heartache, the betrayal, the moments of despair, and the triumphs. I wanted to create something that would not only tell my story but also resonate with others who had faced similar struggles. It was my way of giving back, of offering hope and solidarity to those who felt alone in their battles. When the memoir was published, the response was overwhelming. Readers from all walks of life reached out, sharing their own stories of resilience and courage. I was moved by the connections I made, by the understanding and empathy that flowed from those who had walked their own difficult paths. My story had found its place in the world, and it was making a difference. One of the most poignant moments came during a book signing event. A woman approached me, tears in her eyes, and told me how my story had given her the strength to leave an abusive relationship. "You showed me that it's possible to rise above the pain," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for sharing your truth." Her words touched me deeply, reaffirming the power of storytelling and the impact it can have on others. Through it all, my grandmother remained my steadfast support. Her pride in my achievements was evident in every smile, every word of encouragement. She had been my rock, my sanctuary, and my guiding light. As I stood on the stage at a literary awards ceremony, accepting an accolade for my memoir, I knew that her love and belief in me had made it all possible. In the end, the journey was about more than just exposing the truth. It was about finding my voice, standing up for myself, and forging a path defined by integrity and resilience. My parents' silence was their choice, but my life was mine to shape. With each passing day, I embraced that truth more fully, living a life that was authentically and unapologetically my own. The shadows of the past no longer held power over me. I had found my way out of the darkness and into the light, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same strength and determination that had brought me this far. My story was one of survival, but it was also one of hope. That was a narrative I would continue to share for as long as I had breath to write.